powerful song. It always moves me, and we've had some beautiful music today. I want to thank Marlene and Bob for leading us and providing us with the music. Most of us are aware that next Sunday we begin Advent, and it's our anticipation of Jesus' incarnation as an infant. But on this Sunday, we celebrate the feast of Christ the King. In the verses from Matthew's Gospel, which we read today, we see Jesus in the role of King of Heaven, passing judgment on all the nations of the earth. And in those verses, he tells us how we will be judged. I think the following story illustrates it very well. Oswald Galter was a missionary in northern China during the 1940s. After 10 years of service, he was returning home. His ship stopped in India, and while waiting for a boat home, he found a group of refugees living in a warehouse on the pier. Unwanted by anyone, the refugees were stranded there. Galter went to visit them. As it was Christmas time, he wished them a Merry Christmas and asked them what they would like for Christmas. "We're not Christians," they said. "We don't believe in Christmas." "I know," said the missionary, "but what do you want for Christmas?" They described some German pastries that they were particularly fond of. And so Oswald Galter cashed in his ticket, used the money to buy baskets and baskets of the pastries, took them to the refugees, and wished them a Merry Christmas. When he later repeated the incident to a class, a student said, "But sir, why did you do that for them? They weren't Christians. They don't even believe in Jesus." "I know," he replied, "but I do." So what is it that Galter knows that his students do not? It is really very simple. What you would do for the least of my brothers and sisters, you do for me. However, in Matthew's Gospel, neither the sheep nor the goats saw Jesus in the hungry, the thirsty, the stranger, the poor, the sick, or the imprisoned. In fact, both asked him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry, a stranger, thirsty, poor, sick, or in prison?" You can almost hear them saying, "If you had told us it was you, we would have fed you, given you something to drink, invited you in, given you clothes, tended to you in your illness, and visited you in prison." We ourselves may suffer from this same misconception. We have an idea of what Jesus looks like or how he might speak, and we build that up in our minds. We anticipate seeing him with an aura of light around him, perhaps dressed in white robes. In reality, would we recognize him at all if he appeared among us today? Perhaps we meet him every day and we don't even realize it. This is the point Jesus is making in his response to both the sheep and the goats. We might imagine him saying in modern times, "You didn't have to know it was me all along. It should have been enough to realize no more than that this other person was a human being created in the very image of God. If you had known no more than that, and you did, that would have been enough. You didn't need to know it was me. Had you simply acknowledged their humanity, their God-likeness, you would have been led to do the right thing." This is the challenge we face in our daily lives. Do we try to see the image of God in everyone we meet? Do we make an effort to see each one as an individual, whether we know them personally or not? Too often, and I'm guilty of this, I know it, we tend to talk the poor, the marginalized, the incarcerated, the sick, the elderly, In general terms, we lump problems and people together. The homeless, the welfare class, the third world, the mentally ill, the unemployed, illegal immigrants, etc. Sometimes we should just take a moment to sit on a park bench or a town bench, in a coffee shop or restaurant, or in the library to see carefully the people around us and to think, Jesus died for him, or for her, or for them, just as he did for me. This simple process will deepen our relationships with others whose stories we may never know, or with whom we may never have a close connection. Still, we are all children of God. We need to drop the tendency to categorize people into groups, which the media and sociologists have passed on to us. By doing this, we remove labels and stop thinking of people as collective rather than individuals. We stop categorizing and thinking of people as having more or less the same attitudes, behaviors, and characteristics. Instead, we can see their humanity. They're carrying the image of God. They're holding the divine within them. In other words, we can see them as ourselves. Jonathan Kozol, an educator best known for his books on public education in the United States, spent many years working with children in inner city schools and learning why these students lag behind those in suburban private schools. From this work came his contributions to the interpretation of scientific research into the roots of compassion, altruism, and peaceful human relationships. His advocacy for Head Start programs grew from the knowledge he gleaned from his studies of early childhood education. However, Kozol himself says now that his earlier stance in seeking funding for Head Start embarrasses him. His approach used to be this: every dollar you invest in Head Start today will save the country $6 later in lower prison costs. Now he says, why not invest in them just because they're babies and they deserve to have some joy in life before they die? We Christians take that a different way, take it a step further. Invest in them because they're God's kids. Chips off the divine block as surely as any of us. Jesus is not telling us in Matthew's gospel that we have to come up with innovations or that we perform miracles. He simply asks us to look for him in every person we meet, or even in those we don't meet, but whom we know about. I'm reminded of something St. Francis is supposed to have said, although the Franciscans will tell you they don't have any proof of it. Preach the gospel always. Use words when necessary. We know we are saved by grace and not by what we do. However, that we are saved by grace compels us to love and to commit acts of love. Grace opens our eyes to see things that we would maybe otherwise miss. Grace lets us know that if one day we ask the question, Lord, when did we see you? Jesus' answer will probably be, when did you not? The next question becomes, how can I serve? How can I care for those children of God who are hungry, thirsty, a stranger, poor, sick, or in prison? As I get older, I realize that I cannot physically do the things I did when I was in my 30s, 40s, or 50s, or probably even my 60s. My strength and stamina are not what they used to be. I like to think they are, but they're not. I have to face reality. But Jesus is not asking me to help build homes for the homeless, to travel to prisons or juvenile detention centers, to work on disaster cleanups, although I have done these things in my earlier years. Instead, he's opened to me other avenues I can walk along. He's blessed me with the ability to write and to speak in aid of my brothers and sisters. He's blessed me with a mind which is still curious and eager to learn. He has blessed me now at this age with a sense of interior stillness, along with an ease of being alone without being lonely, With these, I've been able to deepen my prayer life. Now, these actions, they're not things, they're not actions in the way I used to think of being active and present for others, but they're still means of serving to support the well-being of others. Each of us has gifts. We just need to think about them in different ways. Just in our small church community here, we have so many people with extraordinary gifts. We have those who pray constantly for the needs of people in our community and the wider world. Prayer changes lives, not only those who pray, but of those for whom they pray. We have those with the gift of music and song who lift our spirits or remind us of the glory of God. Just remember what St. Augustine said, those who sing pray twice. Singing adds to our praise and worship of God, while our voices are gifts with which we can make music to the Lord. Many people have been led to Jesus by the singing of praises of God, or to God, from those who believe. As for nourishing, clothing, housing the poor, visiting the sick and incarcerated, we may not physically be able to do these, but we can support others in their active ministry to those persons in need. Specifically, several private organizations and larger church congregations in Delta County and surrounding areas do have prison ministries. They work in homeless shelters, they serve in food banks, etc. We could support their efforts in other ways, such as providing Bibles for prison ministries, adopting, quotation marks, families of those incarcerated, sending cards or letters to those in hospitals, nursing homes, prisons, etc. Within our United Methodist community and Cedar Edge CUMC in particular, we have our own outreach ministries. We have UMCOR, the Surface Creek Food Bank, the Heifer International Fund, the Highway 65 Cleanup Day, and our care of the environment through our recycling measures. In town, we also have the Angel Tree, which is now, that's a project now aligned with Cedar Harbor, which is aligned with this church tangentially. For those who are not familiar with that project, its coordinators, who are Peggy Bathy and her daughter Heather McGovern, gather information about the needs of school-aged children and their families here at Cedar Edge. Then they go about fulfilling those needs by making tags, which are placed on the Angel Tree. In fact, it's now set up in the Merc, toward the back, near the meats area. And then people take those tags and they get the gifts on them, and there's a drop-off place. They haven't announced it yet. And Peggy and Heather get everything wrapped and delivered to the families. While the Angel Tree operates its gift tag project during the Christmas season, it also works to meet the needs of Cedar Edge school children and their families throughout the year. And that brings up another point that I wanted to make. This season, we all get bombarded with mailings about donate to this fund, donate to that fund, the Rocky Mountain Food Bank and things like that. But they tend to drop off throughout the rest of the year. We'll get into, quote, ordinary time, which is our lives. We need to be able to keep those areas in front of us, in our presence throughout the year, because all of the problems that are mentioned here in the gospel today, they don't just happen during Thanksgiving and Christmas. Recently, I had a conversation with Connie, and we were just chatting, and she had come across some coins, just like a bag of coins. And she and I are working together on the Heifer Fund here at the church. And so what Connie did was she brought those coins in, and the quarters she put in the tube over here. And by the way, it sits back here. We also have our little red wagon, so don't forget about that. But I do know in checking things, the food banks prefer to get money, because then they can go to the co-ops and buy the food. So I'll talk later about how you can do that. But her talking about baggies of coins reminded me that that's exactly what my husband used to do. He would come home from work every day, empty his pockets, and put the change in baggies. And as he collected the baggies, he usually waited till he had about 2 or 3, and then he would take them to Coinstar someplace and get them converted and deposit the money. Pretty wise way of saving. When he passed away, there were 3 baggies that he had filled up, and I was supposed to take them to the Coinstar for him. I didn't. For sentimental reasons, I had held on to them, and I moved them out here to Colorado, sticking them in the bottom of the dresser drawer. When I had the conversation with Connie about the coins she found, it reminded me of that. So I want to start in small actions and save my coins. Every time I go out and buy something, if I end up getting coins, which I hate to carry in my little purse, I want to put them in the baggie and then go to the Coinstar and get them converted. They can become an additional donation that I can make to areas here at the church and in the wider community. Just remember this, it's not large acts that make a difference. It's just acts of love. So in the old ways, we used to say every little bit helps, and it's true. No one will ever turn down a gift, no matter how small, and even little tiny gifts. One of my favorite, I guess I would say, faith people is a young woman. She passed away at the age of 24 from leukemia. Her name was Therese, and she was physically disabled. She had actually tuberculosis, not leukemia. She had tuberculosis, but she had it in her legs, in one of her legs. It got into the bone, and so she lived with pain for much of her short life. But her philosophy was, every day, acts of love for God. Small acts bring great gifts. And that's what we need to remember. So I close this sermon with this challenge. Be creative and share your gifts with our brothers and sisters who are suffering. It may be pocket change saved in a baggie. It may be sending cards or letters to the sick or in prison. It may be setting aside time each day to pray for others, taking care to speak their names and see them as individual children of God. It may be singing hymns of praise as we do our daily tasks. It may be volunteering at the animal cell shelters or, gathering up towels, dog food, whatever. Collectively, our gifts are powerful. And there's so many ways that we can show our love for God and his creation. Amen.